Alpha One Drop Zone presents Honoring Our Veterans, a series of interviewing our military veterans. Our purpose is to reconnect our country with our veterans and our history.
Hello, my name is Steve Gonzalez, Vice President of Marketing at Alpha One Drop Zone. We're honored today to have another veteran. His name is Larry Clark. Larry Clark is an atomic veteran. We'll talk about that today. Larry, first of all, thank you for your service.
No problem.
It's a pleasure. And a lot of people haven't heard of atomic veterans, so I guess we'll go back to when you first joined the military and we'll go from there, if you want to talk about that.
Okay. Well, I'm from Kansas, and I joined the Navy because I just wanted to see the world. And so when I joined, one of the schools, the Navy sends you to a lot of schools, and one of them they sent me to was called the Harbor Defense School. It was located in out of San Francisco, and at the time that I did it, I had no idea what it was, but the Harbor Defense School trained people for atomic blasts, and so I trained for atomic blasts, not knowing why, but I thought from the atomic blast school that I would be sent on shore, which is what I was really gunning for. But actually, they sent me on a little seagull, what was called a seagull tug, and the name of the tug was the Abenaki. All seagull tugs in the Navy are named after Indian tribes, and the Abenaki was an Indian tribe. And as a matter of fact, the first blast that I ever saw was named after an Indian. It was called the Cherokee.
Did they name all the blasts after Indian too?
They named all the blasts after. They were all named after Indian tribes. And the first one that went off, or the one that I remember the most, was the Cherokee.
Okay.
And it was one of the largest blasts. As a matter of fact, most of the blasts were much larger than the blasts from either Nagasaki or Hiroshima, either one.
How many times more would you say, Larry, the blast?
I would say, I know how many more. There were 17 of them.
But as far as times, the ratio versus here's the blast, was it like 5 times, 6 times, 7 times more?
At least the first one maybe was twice the blast of Hiroshima. But most of the blasts after that were much larger than either Hiroshima or Nagasaki blasts. Either one. They were much bigger.
Where were you at for the first blast, Larry?
Theoretically, I was supposed to have been 20 miles. It was dropped off of a ship. It was the first one to ever dropped off of a ship. And my ship, because of its size, which is small, we were supposed to have been 20 miles from it, and we ended up being 10 miles from it. But all of them had the magnitude of at least 20 times more powerful than either Nagasaki or Hiroshima, either one.
Now, Larry, you were in Abenaki Island. That's part of the Marshall Islands. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
They sent us down there, and that's where all that's where all the tests were run, was from the Marshall Islands.
And you were on that seagoing tug the whole time? You was anchored there?
Yeah, we were anchored there. Seagoing tugs were chosen basically because of their size. They're small, and so they could get into the atoll itself, where some of your larger ships couldn't get in.
So you were on the lagoon, right, the whole time?
Every day, after a blast, we would go in and go swimming.
Oh, wow.
Right in that same water, and nobody, at least I didn't, think anything about it because, water's wet, and it was not a big deal at all, but after every blast, and there were over 17 blasts, we would just go back over on the beach and go swimming every day. We did that every day. We'd go swimming. But I always thought it was kind of interesting that we could go fishing every day also, but we couldn't keep any of the fish because they were all so radioactively hot that they were too dangerous for us to bring aboard ship. But we could fish all day long, and we could go swimming every day in that same water.
How long were you anchored there?
4 months, roughly 4 months.
4 months.
4 months.
And there were 17 blasts while you were there.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
So, your job title as a Navy personnel, what was your main duty on the ship, your job?
Well, my job code, if you want to call it a code, I was an electrician. And because I was an electrician, when these barges, they had electrical motors aboard them, and if one of them would go out, quit, then me and my buddy were the two that were sent over on those ships, over on the barges to fix them. So we were over there. We were on the barges a lot, and we had absolutely no extra protection of any sort.
So these, like discs that you had told me about prior, they tested for radioactivity, right?
That was that's what their job was as the bombs were blasted, then the radiation theoretically was all collected in these discs to see how big the blasts were. And one time that I do remember was the time that one of the blasts, the discs weren't collecting any radiation at all. And so we were sent over, me and my buddy, were sent over on the disc to get the motors running again so they could collect how much radiation was being collected for each blast.
Wow. Of course, with the radiation, of course, you suffered health issues. Can you talk about that? How it affected you health-wise there?
Some of them are easy to talk about. I don't know whether you can see this disc that's there or not.
Yeah, I can
I'm
see.
sure you can see the one on the top of my head. These all came from radiation burns. And it took me months after the blast for the Navy to also agree with me that all of these, see, this one's pretty big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If they were, it took a long time for the Navy to actually agree that, yeah, those were radiation burns.
So there was Navy personnel just like you. I understand there was quite a few thousand from Kansas that was over there during those various tests too?
Well, at those tests, there were basically, from what I've read, 22,000 service people, but very, very few of them were small enough to get into the lagoon, which was one of my lucky duties. We could get it, we could. I don't know whether it was luck or what it was, but if anything was wrong with any of the discs, me and my buddy were the ones that were sent over and worked on top of these discs to correct them.
Yeah. When, well, first of all, the way I understand it, this was the top secret information, top secret clearance and so forth.
Well, it was top secret enough to know that years later, when I decided I was going to check it out, and the Abenaki just didn't exist. You could get no information about the Abenaki whatsoever. We were the closest ship to the disc all the time. But when I went back to check on the Abenaki to get some records from the ship's logs, there was no information. At that point, there were no if there were recordings, I couldn't get to them. They had totally disappeared from public view.
To my knowledge, I believe it was 1996 when President Clinton lifted the, what I want to say, it was the Atomic Secrets Act, where you weren't allowed to tell anybody or speak about it. And when he lifted that, you were allowed, to tell your story and about your experience and so forth.
We could go in there, and they lifted all the records, except when they did that, my ship's records, which were the Abenaki, was like it never existed. You could not go there and get any information because it had been just scrubbed out.
To my knowledge, Larry, this is what I heard, but it may be hearsay, that some of the top secret information back then, they went ahead and declassified it, didn't completely declassified it to unclassified, but from top secret to secret. So maybe that could have been a factor. Maybe that's what had happened.
Well, it was, but if you've ever seen any movies, it'll show you, if they ever show any records, it's got paragraphs and paragraphs of recordings that don't they don't list. I could go back to the Abenaki and look, but the ship had no records.
Yeah.
Had no records.
Now, as far as the island, what happened to the island? What did they I guess they probably removed all the radio activity.
Well,
and so forth.
And all of your native inhabitants of the islands were taken off of the islands, and they still weren't there. And we could fish every day. After a blast, we could fish, but we couldn't bring any of the fish aboard because they were too dangerous. They were all radioactive.
It probably became deformed too, probably more likely.
Just a lot of them dead, and a lot of the vegetation was destroyed. And the natives that were there were moved off and have never gone back.
One thing we didn't say that I want to make it known to everybody that you are a Korean veteran. You served during the Korean War.
Yes.
So once again, it's great. We appreciate what you did and all Korean veterans. So what's the greatest memory that you would say of your experience with being an atomic veteran, Larry?
Well, probably seen, see, we had to be below decks when the blast would go off. There were 17 of them that I saw. But as soon as a blast had occurred, then we could go topside and see it. And so when you see all these pictures of the atomic blast, I saw all of them. And you could just see them. They were all done basically at dawn. And usually, as soon as the blast went off, then we could go topside and we could see it, and we could see the blast form. And you know, I know you've seen pictures of the mushroom cloud.
Right.
Well, I saw all of them, and for some reason, one of the very few times in my life that I ever saw Navy people not talk was right after a blast, because we had to be below decks when the blast went off. Then we could go up and watch, and we could see the mushroom clouds and the colors. The colors of the clouds were actually unbelievable. Every color that you've ever seen in your life was in these clouds, and we could see them form as they got larger and larger. And it's the only, like I said, it's the only time in my life I ever remember Navy people not talking, because we got to go topside as soon as the blast went off, and we could see them, and we could see the mushroom. Usually, they would start kind of low, because they were dropped from airplanes, most of them, and then as they formed and got larger and larger. It's the only time in my life I can remember 50 Navy people not saying anything, because we could all go aboard, go topside, and we could watch these mushrooms, just see them just low, and they kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And everybody aboard my ship, which is one of the smaller ships there, just didn't say anything. We just stood up there and watched it. There was nothing we could say.
Well, Larry, I'm glad that I had an opportunity to meet you, and that you can tell everyone, about your experience. It's just unbelievable what happened. And the thing I want to say to you and all other atomic veterans, and of course, I don't know if it'll ever be in history books, what transpired. I don't know, but at least we can tell your story to everybody. And personally, I think all of the atomic veterans should have been recognized. I know you did not receive an atomic service medal or anything like that, but I wish maybe that would change in the future. But if not, thank you for your service for our country. And people don't realize, correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, but throughout these tests, you just set a foundation for some of the things what we do now with nuclear weapons, based upon what transpired, out there at these various islands.
Well, that was the purpose.
Right.
That was the purpose.
Yeah. Well, thank you a lot, Larry. God bless you. Thank you for your service again, and it's great to have you here. And thank you, Sharon, today for your time and talent.